The Panthers forward group is looking to be healthier as they are heading into their Saturday matchup against the Seattle Kraken. What does this mean for the forward lines? And what are the pros and cons of the NHL decentralizing the draft?
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome into this Friday, October 27th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News, and you can follow me on X at Monoman12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. And today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. And Panther fans, we are doing a giveaway here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. And I want to thank you, especially those on the YouTube who have subscribed to the channel. We are now over 600 subscribers on the YouTube. And we have a giveaway. It's this hat right here. That has the Emirate logo on the side and also has the official bank of the Panthers on the back. Never worn before, and this is a giveaway. And all you have to do is send in your screenshot of your subscription to the Locked On Florida Panthers YouTube channel. Whether it's email, you can email it at lockedonflapanthers@gmail.com or message the LO_FLA Panthers Instagram and X page for your entry. So the winner is going to be announced sometime in the next week or two. So make sure to send in your entry for your chance to win that hat. But it is Friday, which means it is a Fairbanks Friday edition of the show. Nick Fairbanks is back here. And good morning, my friend, and welcome back off the IR.
Thank you so much. It's glad to be back and glad to see that the team has fought back to be 500. Can't wait to see what they're going to be able to do going forward now that, we hope that they're going to be fully healthy.
And I love that you started off with that because I think as far as the people that I've spoken to, of course, I speak to you and Jacob on the weekly and with our Panther Parkway chat and all. There's not a lot of negativity when it comes to the situation with injuries and all and where the Panthers are at. And that goes into more of what the Panthers had at practice on Thursday about Sam Bennett being back, manning that second line with Carter Verhaeghe and Matthew Tkachuk. Even spoke to the media after about how he feels that the team is in a really good position for how they got there for when the reinforcements do come back. And with the forward lines as well, as far as what was going in and what was going out, there was subbing off of center for top line as far as Steven Lorentz being there as well. So there could be a chance that Alexander Barkov also makes his return to the lineup, as there's a little bit of an illness spreading around the locker room. And it's not just in the Florida Panthers, it's around the NHL as well, as far as that. So multiple players are going down sick. But great to have Bennett back, his first practice since getting that injury in the preseason against the Tampa Bay Lightning and all. And can't emphasize the amount of importance for Sam Bennett as far as his physical presence and also what it does up and down the lineup. And when it comes to players who benefit the most as far as that, I think Anton Lundell benefits as well, being on that third line. And early on through 6 games, we've seen that revolving door of someone on his right wing, Reinhart being upgraded to the top line, which right now you can't, like we spoke about with Jacob, you can't change that right now with how hot he is. And also Lundell going up to the top line as well with Barkov's absence. I think this is just a very great situation as well for what the forward lines are going to look like, assuming that they're healthy going into Saturday.
You actually get to start seeing the actual depth that this Panthers roster was constructed to have. And I think the big thing right now is, maybe we'll see a more effective second and third line because it seems like this season's been carried by the first line, by Reinhardt, and also the fourth line, who's just every single time they're on the ice, they're providing energy or they're providing offensive zone support. So I think the whole team is going to benefit. But if I were to say the lines that are going to benefit the most is obviously the second line and also the third line with Lundell, because then most of that pressure that he's been dealing with going from the first line and also the second line will now be taken off of him, and he can probably provide a little bit more support and a little bit more of his type of play he'll be able to do. So, we're just one more day or one more game closer to being fully healthy. And, as you said it, I don't think any fan should be worried about where Florida is right now. They're 3-3, they're at 500. They're missing their top two defensemen. They're missing their, top six center, and their top center, their MVP candidate. And, not all things are bad. I mean, we could be Pittsburgh right now.
Or
You
Washington.
know, or Washington, and it's the sky's not falling at all. So I'm just glad right now that nobody's jumping off a building or a bridge right now. But it's going to take a couple games once everybody gets healthy to get everybody kind of on the same page and playing together. But if the team can do this while completely decimated, I like our chances going forward.
And you also talk about how the production and or as far as energy is mostly been the top line and the fourth line. And when you get that middle six, uh, the stability there, you like you said at the top of your last statement, depth is really what's going to really show for this Florida Panthers team. And yes, Matthew Tkachuk, despite not scoring, has just been creating plays on whether it's on the power play or at 5-on-5 as well. Carter Hagee still has 3 goals on the season as
Mm-hmm.
well, despite going from the top line to the second line as well. There, Nick Cousins, not only has Lundell been a revolving door around the top up and down, Nick Cousins has been as well, going to the fourth line as well, and then going back. So we get to see a little bit of all that. And here's also the other thing: the Panthers do not have to do a roster transaction as far as sending somebody down. Right now, I know we saw Yona Jakovic practice with the team right now, but Paul Maurice, everything that Paul Maurice indicated doesn't look like that he's going to be ready as far as that. He's
Mm-hmm.
on Cat Friendly. It says that he's on IR still. So you don't need to send Mackie Samoskevich down. But we also did not see him as far as the main forward group on Thursday as far as that. So could we see him sent down? Could we not? I mean, that still remains to be seen. The Panthers will be practicing at 11 a.m. today from Amerant Bank Arena. So we'll know more about Barkov's status, of course, Bennett. But Bennett spoke to the media as well. So even though Maurice didn't confirm, the fact that Bennett spoke to the media, you can put two and two together there as far as confidence in his availability, whether he is going to suit up or not on Saturday against the Seattle Kraken. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss something that has been voted on by each of the 32 teams about decentralizing the NHL entry draft and whether Nick or I necessarily like it, or the fact that they are one step closer to decentralizing it. We're going to discuss that and more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Parkview Advance. And as a business owner, you realize that there are times when receivables might fall behind, but that doesn't mean you need to fall behind on vendor payments, payroll, or rent. For more than 25 years, Parkview Advance has helped businesses secure working capital from 5,000 to 1.5 million. Parkview Advance can improve your working capital in as little as 24 hours. It's such an easier process than you might imagine. We invite the many entrepreneurs that are Locked On NHL fans to learn more about it by calling us at 203-675-0071 or go to parkviewadvance.com. If your business needs working capital, call Parkview Advance today. Parkview Advance helping businesses with their working capital. Go to parkviewadvance.com. Also, this episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. And there is a lot of uncertainty in the world, and it's important to be prepared with unrest in the Middle East, fires in Hawaii, hurricanes and tornadoes in Florida, earthquakes, and more. The Jace case is a personalized emergency medication kit that contains 5 essential antibiotics and treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections. You can customize your case and additional life-saving medications based on your unique needs. Jace Medical now offers customizability for your Jace case with dozens of add-on medications. Choose the medication that best fits you or your family's unique needs. Jace is continuously working on expanding their medication offerings. In their most recent efforts, they add ivermectin as an option in the Jace case. So go to jacemedical.com and enter promo code locked on at checkout for a $20 discount on your order. Once again, you can get a $20 discount on your order at jacemedical.com with using the promo code locked on at JASE medical.com. Segment number 2 here on this Friday, October 27th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Friday edition of the show, on a Fairbanks Friday, more importantly, as well. Nick, so there have been talks over the last week of the NHL wanting to decentralize the NHL entry draft, and the votes are coming together, and it's leaning towards the fact that the NHL is going to be decentralizing the draft. We don't know when. We don't know if it's going to be as soon as 2024. But for sure, it's looking like that for 2025 is going to be for sure a decentralized draft. We know when it comes to the NFL and the NBA, that's how those work as far as that. And it's weird to compare drafts as far as different leagues because the differences between the NHL and Major League Baseball versus the NFL and the NBA, what are the differences between the two? In the NFL and the NBA, those players are more likely to, well, not more likely, they are going to probably play for the team immediately versus the NHL and Major League Baseball. There's chances are that they don't play immediately for the team. They spend maybe 2 or 3 years in the AHL, back in junior, Europe, you name it as far as that. But as far as the NHL entry draft, I love how it works. I love the fact that the teams, not the commissioner, the teams get to go up to the microphone, their scouting department. Yeah, I feel like with timing from pick to pick, it could take a little long, but the intimate moment that prospect gets to have with the team versus shaking the commissioner's hand. The players don't deal with the commissioner on a daily basis. They deal with the team. And I think with that being taken away, it's really sad in my opinion. But also the logistics of paying for scouting departments to be in hotels, travel to another city, and then the turnaround of going to free agency. But at the same time, free agency is July 1st. What is also on July 1st for a lot of people who in the hockey industry? Canada Day. So why not change when free agency is so that you can also enjoy your holiday too? I'm not going to pretend that I know all the meaning of Canada Day as someone who's American, but I think that as far as a con, I think that's a big one, the intimate moment with the team. What says you, Nick?
So I have two opinions about this. Number one, I feel like we're kind of going back to a system that was done maybe in the 70s and 80s where drafts would be a little bit more decentralized. Teams would send in their picks or it wasn't even televised. You just read it in your next day's newspaper. But, as you said, they're taking away an intimate moment, something that I think a lot of players look forward to, getting into the league, where they get their name called, they come down, shake the hands of any scouts or anybody. They get to put on the jersey with the organization that they're hopefully going to represent. And it's not about the commissioner, it's about that player and that organization, moving forward because they believe that this person or this player, this kid, is going to put them into a better position going forward. Now, I mean, yeah, you're gonna announce their name. They're going to hold up a jersey. I don't know if they're still going to put it on, but then they shake the hand of the commissioner. I don't know if this is supposed to make Gary look better or not, or more player friendly. But at the same time, I don't think a player is really going to, I guess it's not going to be the greatest thing for them now. It's not going to be something to look, forward to. And then as far as like a scheduling, thing, I don't think the NHL has done a very good job. I don't mean to overly criticize, but I mean they had the frozen frenzy on the night that the NBA started. I mean they couldn't think of another day that possibly to put all 32 teams playing. Or hey, wait till the weekend for that to happen. I understand that they would have to compete with college football or even the NFL, but maybe a Friday. I think that would probably be a lot better. You get a lot more viewership. Definitely put your more emphasis on like the Bedards and the McDavids, the Crosbys, things like that. But it just seems like the NHL has a problem with, either scheduling or promoting the brand. And it just seems like every time that they try to do something different, it's already fallen on its face, or it takes away something that's very special to either a particular player, a prospect, or the team itself.
Yeah, and the thing is, what what do what do the NBA and the NFL do really well as far as marketing? They're stars.
Correct.
The NHL, they like to market the team. I guess it's also within the hockey culture as well as team over me. Especially when it comes to promoting the original six, which honestly, the original six is so overblown as far as marketing. There's honestly an original one, which is the Montreal Canadiens, and that everyone else is an expansion team as well. If you really think about it in that way, when you look back at the history of this game, and just the overblown as far as that, but the emphasis is not on the player. Yeah, Connor Bedard has had a lot of fanfare. They have actually done a really good job as far as promoting him. But as far as outside of the Bedard, McDavid's, Crosby, like if you're a casual, not everyone knows who Alexander Barkov is. Let's be real.
Yep.
Not outside of that, and he's one of the best centers in the NHL. Maybe the standard when it comes to two-way centers, which we had an episode a few weeks ago. If he's the standard as far as that, and also selfishly for as someone who works in the media, and even though I would like to go to a draft one day, I've never gone to a draft of any sport.
Hmm.
Networking is taken away too, as far as that, as far as being together there. But as far as, but here's a little bit of a pro too, as far as that, because we gotta put at least discuss both scenarios as far as that. You won't need to be paranoid as far as somebody, a scout or a GM from another table peeking in on like if you're gonna pick somebody over them or trying to draft somebody ahead when it comes to that. And here's also another pro: individual teams, but this is also dependent on market as well. They can have their own draft parties as far as getting together, as far as having the fans. In the example of the Florida Panthers, they could have Stanley C. Panther and Victor E. Rat. As far as that, the problem with the Panthers and doing that is they don't have a first round pick till 2026. So
Hmm.
how are the Panthers going to do a get together and get the fan base to be bought in on a draft for rounds 2 through 7 as well on day 2, as far as that? So depending on market and depending on draft capital and situation and all that, um, teams with high capital like the Blackhawks, they can host the big parties every single year, even post, but even after the year that Bedard was drafted, because the amount of assets that they've accumulated as well. So there's a little bit of the pros there as well, because I think the year that the Panthers drafted Mackie Samoskevich, they had like they're at like a boat restaurant as well, like on the sea in
Hmm.
Broward County. The Panthers probably won't be able to have something similar than that based on their situation. So it's just dependent as well on that. So there are a little bit of that as far as paranoia, as far as like drafting. But if and I'm not gonna be crying over billionaires spending money on their scouts and their GMs to be spending money on hotels and all that stuff. But there have been stories about what happened in Nashville at this past draft about traveling out of the city. Some have had delayed flights going back home just to cover free agency. So we kind of understand. We don't have to agree, but we can understand why they want to do it in that way.
Definitely, and that might be just like a one-off, because I know some of the reporters, had issues getting into Nashville, for the same exact reasons. But um, to me, it seems like the NHL is constantly trying to do better, but then also taking a step back at the same time. Like, you can't take 2 steps forward without taking 5 steps back. And I didn't really want to get on this topic, but the whole you know um, tape situation,
Oh
that they've
yeah.
kind of gone forward, they've gone back, they're going back forward. It's like, what are you doing? Like, do you guys have a consistent message? Do you guys know what you guys are even trying to do? So, um, to me, this whole draft thing, I think, number one, it's a cost cutting measure. Two, I think it takes money away from any kind of host city. Most of the time, because now you don't have as many people actually going to be in the hotels. You don't have restaurants that are going to be built out. And if a team doesn't have their draft picks, like, let's say Pittsburgh goes crazy and they want to start shipping out their first round picks because they want to bring more talent in to get Pittsburgh over the hump. Who's going to go to the draft for Pittsburgh? Like, are there going to be fans that are going to want to go there? So, and I don't mean to pick on Pittsburgh specifically. It's just they're top of mind right now. But there's a lot of things to me that don't quite make sense, from a sense that you want to build or grow the game. And now you're taking this away from that availability to grow, and get more people involved. But it seems like the NHL is perfectly okay with, hey, yeah, no, we'll keep it the way it is because it's the way we like it, or hey, let's cut costs at the expense of somebody's experience. So I think, right now it's not a good idea. But maybe they'll put on a great show. Maybe they'll employ somebody who worked for the NFL and was able to put these things together. It was wildly successful. But as of right now, I think the NHL's record is against them. And until there's a change, whether in leadership or either in planning, um, I don't see this as being overly positive.
Yeah, and with 2025 being probably the earliest that this happens, and with 2024, I believe the draft is in Vegas, and they're gonna try to do it at the Sphere. It's not a coincidence that 2025 would be the first year that it's done, if they're able to. Nothing is officially confirmed as far as that, but that's where it's headed to as well. So, you know, it's not it's bad for the players in our opinion as well. But
Yep.
we're going to transition over to segment number 3, where we are going to preview the Florida Panthers game as they against the Seattle Kraken, as they welcome in another team with and related to water coming into South Florida this Saturday. But we are going to discuss that and more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. And the NHL season brings all sorts of possibilities, with possibly Alexander Barkov scoring 50 goals, and the Panthers could hoist the Stanley Cup, and you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our #1 choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy contests. And we there are certain players where you could help you win 100 times your money, which with Matthew Tkachuk being over a point per game since being with the Florida Panthers, you could choose him on the sleeper app as well, and you could also do it as far as different sports like the NFL, NBA, and college football. And especially with Tua Tagovailoa being a MVP candidate in the NHL, you could also go to that. And if he's going to have a certain amount of passing yards against the New England Patriots this week, especially if Tyreek Hill is playing uh, th- this weekend. And all you have to do is pick whatever studs you like. And like we said, Matthew Tkachuk, Alexander Barkov, Sergei Bobrovsky, and even guys outside of the Florida Panthers like Alexander Ovechkin, who just scored his first goal this season, Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon, or Connor McDavid whenever he does come back healthy. But in while Connor McDavid is out, you can rely on Leon Draisaitl as well there. And if they'll record more or less than their sleeper projections, like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more in a given game, to win a 100 times bet, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Panther fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks. You can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONHL. See Sleeper's terms and use for details and locational availability. Segment number 3 here on this Friday, October 27th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Friday edition of the show here on a Fairbanks Friday. So, Nick, the Florida Panthers, they welcome in the Seattle Kraken on Saturday. And yes, one more practice until the Florida Panthers take the ice in a game setting again. And yes, we'll know more about the statuses of Barkov and Bennett, but things look good as far as them playing. So the Florida Panthers record versus the Seattle Kraken 1-3-0. Their first win coming last season against the Kraken. And the thing with the Kraken last season, first season was not so great as far as missing the playoffs. A lot of course, getting a lot of the players from the expansion draft and trying to build off their draft capital and all. But last season, man, what the Seattle Kraken had was a lot of depth scoring. 8 guys with 15 plus goals, 13 with 10 plus, and that was with them getting 890 goaltending last season with Martin Jones and Philip Grubauer in the mix. Chris Drieger, thankfully, he is recovered from his torn ACL, but he is with Coachella Valley right now. But the depth scoring has not been there for the Seattle Kraken, as they are 27th in the league in goals for at 2.25. Goals against is 3.38. Good for 22nd in the league, but they're actually pretty decent on special teams, as they are both in the top 15 in those categories. Grubauer and Joey Decord, which if you watched the Charlotte Checkers a few years ago, you are familiar with Joey Decord, as the Florida Panthers shared an affiliate with the Seattle Kraken for one season. Both of them are combined are a 903 save percentage. So they're getting more of the saves, but the depth scoring is lacking for the Seattle Kraken. And they lost a little bit of their depth scoring last season. Daniel Sprong is with the Detroit Red Wings. Ryan Donato is with the Chicago Blackhawks. And 2 other guys are hurt right now. Andre Burakovsky is injured, and Brandon Tanev is also hurt as well. And this is the thing. That's at least the narrative with the Seattle Kraken is the go-to guy for them. Matty Beniers is only in year 2 in the NHL, and Jared McCann was your top scorer at 40 last season. You know, not 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 a knock against former Panther Jared McCann, but on a lot of teams he wouldn't be your leading goal scorer as well. And as far as a guy taking over a team and putting the team on his back, there's still a lot of growing that Matty Beniers has to do as far as that. Calder Trophy winner, still has a bright future ahead of him. But this is like, at least from looking at from afar, as far as someone who doesn't watch the Kraken every single day, as far as that. But hey, they did beat the Detroit Red Wings in overtime on the Frozen Frenzy with Jared McCann getting the game time goal and the primary assist um, to beat the Detroit Red Wings on the road, which Detroit is doing so well this season. Uh, but that's a little bit of what my insight on the Seattle Kraken as they welcome them to town. What any thoughts on the opposition going into Saturday?
Yeah, definitely. So Seattle plays a game where they come in waves. They play a full four-line game. They're all effective in creating chances or at least shutting down the opposition. I mean, that's exactly what got them past Colorado last year, which nobody chose the Kraken over Colorado. But hey, after winning the cup, it's a long way to get back to the playoffs. But Seattle's a team that never says die. As you said, they've had depth scoring and everything. Now that's being challenged a little bit early on this season because of injuries. But the saving grace for them is that Philip Grubauer's come into the season has played fantastically. If anything, I think he could have stolen a game or two already. It's just that the team defense or a couple of defensive lapses have actually cost them some games. But they beat the Red Wings in overtime. They just lost to Carolina the other evening in overtime. But we can't sleep on them. So with the way that the Panthers have been playing this season, it either seems like they're getting goalied, like they have good chances, or they're getting goalied, or unfortunately, they've had some defensive breakdowns. But the defense better be on their toes because this is a team that likes to drive the net, tries to create speed and a lot of confusion in the neutral zone. And if they're able to do that, then this could be a very, very long game for the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, and they have a lot of, and like you said, speed as well, and forwards who can get on the puck as well after shots and pin you, and their first power play unit is it's five forwards there. The
Mm-hmm.
way their power play unit works as far as that, according to Daily Faceoff as well. So they have fast guys who can hug the blue line, hug you on the half walls as well, and can catch you off guard as well when it comes to that. And Dave Hackstall, great job that he did last season. Got himself an extension after all the criticism that went his way after his tenure in Philadelphia as well, and looks like they're, with where they were last season to the season before. A lot of the talk is like maybe they're going to be somewhere in the middle of that as well. But traveling cross country is going to be it's always tough whenever it comes to different time change as well. Their body clock is at 4 p.m. when they're playing a 7 p.m. Game as well when it comes to going to the East Coast as well. But I mean, well, Saturday's game is 6 p.m. Excuse me. But body clock is a little different when it comes to that. So and this is the thing with getting someone like Vince Dunn in the expansion draft as well, a guy who's a great top pair defenseman as well, got himself an extension there
Mm-hmm.
too. So there's a lot of good pieces there for the Seattle Kraken as far as trying to build still, and this is also without Shane Wright as well, who's still in
Correct.
Coachella Valley as well. Jeff Merrick also spoke about the different addresses that Shane Wright had last season with Seattle, Coachella Valley, going back to junior, getting traded from one junior team to the next junior team, back to Coachella Valley, being in the Calder Cup playoffs, which they got to the final last year. So there's a lot on the mind of him, and as far as the travel and what mentally it does to somebody, and the fact that they don't have him in the mix consistently, they could be a force. So maybe sometime in the future as well, as they're trying to still build from the ground up. And let's not forget, GMs learned lessons from the Vegas expansion draft, and they didn't give them any opportunities to have as many big
Yeah.
steals as the Vegas Golden Knights had for sure. But gonna be hopefully a good game, and hopefully a Panthers win as they get to over 500 on the season. And like Sam Bennett said, great situation that the Florida Panthers find themselves in. But Nick, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this Friday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, and tell everybody where they can find you online, my friend.
Armando, thank you again for having me on. I just hope for a Florida Panthers win on Saturday. Just stay out of the box and clog up that neutral zone, slow them down. So everybody can find me on the X at Prudentia0. And I hope I'm back next week, hopefully not on the IR or, trying to find a way to watch the game next Friday. But I will definitely be here. So thank you again, Armando.
Next Friday's game will be against I wonder who. Oh, the Red Wings. I forget that Nick Fairbanks is married to a Red Wings fan. So it's going to be a fun night in the Fairbanks household, that's for sure. So
Mm-hmm.
can't wait to see you next Friday as we break down that game as well. So see you next Friday, my friend.
See you next Friday.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Nick Fairbanks, and you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.